Hi there, I'm Brandy Lloyd, and you are listening to the Restore Path podcast, a place for women over 40 who want to feel good, look good, and do good in the world, and not be burdened with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. Today, I'm answering the question, is cannabis a healthy pain management solution, even if I'm a Christian? In this podcast, I'm going to lay out some of the non-disputed medicinal properties of cannabis, the various forms of cannabis, dosage, usage, and finally discuss the spiritual argument as it pertains to Christianity. Now, I got to be honest, when I shared this topic and question with my husband, his response was, that's dicey. Yeah, no kidding. The topic of cannabis can be very divisive. So rather than just jump right into the spiritual ramifications, which often cause the division when we consider this question, let's take a moment and lay out a little education in regards to cannabis and pain management and its background. So, for many people, especially Christians or people of any kind of faith, cannabis is a confusing subject. It's hard to separate the medicinal issues with the spiritual issues because cannabis has been known as a drug. The cannabis plant, however, whether in the form of cannabis or hemp, has been used medicinally for thousands of years. In the 1970s, after 30 years of stoking fears in regards to marijuana, it was the U.S. government that decided and declared cannabis to be a Schedule I drug and a controlled substance, stating its concerns that the drug was, quote, has a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use, end quote. This basically changed cannabis all around the world as other countries joined the ban. Now, sadly, this halted most cannabis research in regards to medicinal use and kept it from being used by anyone seeking a natural method of medicine, at least here in the United States and in most of the modernized parts of the world. So as I share this podcast right now here in California, cannabis is legal both recreationally and medicinally in most of the United States and finally federally. But somewhere in around 1996, cannabis was legalized for medicinal use here in my home state of California. And as far as my family goes, we were very thankful for this. One of our family members was finally able to experience some nausea relief due to high doses of pain management pharmaceuticals because they have an incredibly aggressive and crippling arthritis. The meds are harsh, and cannabis was a real relief. So even though he can barely keep down any food and was losing way too much weight, he struggled spiritually with the use of cannabis to control his nausea. Very disappointing. Now, cannabis does have a long history of medicinal benefits, and I am so grateful that the research on this extraordinary plant is in full swing. But people have been benefiting from the medicinal properties of cannabis for a long, long time, my friend. As a matter of fact, the earliest mention of cannabis being used medicinally was in Egypt around 3,000 years ago, and then in China about 2,500 years ago. In fact, there's a lot of people that say that the very first Bible was no doubtedly printed on hemp. So what is happening now with cannabis now that it's legal? Well, the government has been the first to capitalize on this new legal situation and has already designed an epilepsy drug made from hemp, a type of cannabis plant. So there are pros and cons to this. One of the pros is that dosing will be easier now that if you have epilepsy and you would like to use cannabis, the dosing will be easier now that it's in a pharmaceutical delivery method. But knowing the government, the cannabis used for the pharmaceuticals, they're not going to be organic. They're going to be, riddled with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and everything else. I mean, where there is money, there is governmental opportunity and regulation and everything else. They definitely want to have the monopoly on this plant. But now that we can grow, like people in my own state and in Colorado, the growing laws have changed and people now have the option to grow their own medicine and not be at the mercy of insurance companies and pharmaceutical copies of the real deal plant. So you can probably already hear my stance on this. I'm definitely pro-cannabis. Not because it's legal, but because it works. And I really believe that we should self-monitor our own addiction tendencies. What is a stumbling block that leads to sin or issues for one person just isn't for another. Just within alcohol, gambling, shopping, TV, hobbies, fitness, and even taking care of your own health. Anything good has the potential to be harmful or addictive, and that's cannabis included. So I'm not blind to that. Now, my own road to cannabis was for pain management, and it began with CBD. I started with a commercial hemp brand called Charlotte's Web. They're based out of Colorado, and they have an amazing story about a little girl who suffered terrible seizures, whose military dad, while deployed, learned about the benefits of CBD and encouraged his wife to track some down. Thankfully, they were living in Colorado. And so if you have a minute, check out their story. It's absolutely amazing. Charlotte's Web, even the Today Show, and it's been all over the news. And today, Charlotte, the little girl, is blossoming and basically a regular, healthy little kid with little to no seizures, thanks to cannabis and this CBD plant that actually doesn't get you stoned. So now that I've said CBD all these times, there's CBD, there's THC. What's the deal? So just to keep it really simple, CBD is a non-euphoric, that means non-psychedelic form of cannabis. That just means you can't get high. Some people like to refer to it as hemp. I just call all of it cannabis. But the science of cannabidiol, that's CBD, that's the scientific name for CBD, can get really detailed. Just know that the FDA says that cannabis that has less than 0.3% THC is considered non-psychoactive and can be sold and shipped like any other supplement on the market. It's at grocery stores and, believe it or not, even gas stations. Now, THC is the psychoactive form or part of a cannabis plant, which conjures up images for most people of like Cheech and Chong. So long story short, when someone says hemp, they're letting you know that the product they're referring to meets the less than 0.3% FDA guidelines. But really, it's all cannabis. Now, the processed food industry is all over this one, and you can find CBD in just about anything. This does not mean that the product is healthy, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're getting any of the benefits of CBD. I see it in chapstick, shampoo, lotions, dog food, kombucha. I mean, you name it, they are putting CBD in it right now. And unfortunately, some people are confusing. I've tried CBD and it isn't helping. I tried a CBD, whatever cookie from the AM PM and it didn't work. You're not really getting the best quality here. So, I don't care if you want to get high or not and why you're reaching for the CBD. I mean, the same can be said for alcohol or your little chill pills you get from your doctor. Whatever it is you're doing, that's between you and your own walk with the Lord. If you have a Lord like I do, and that's going to all come into play. But quality really matters when it comes to any of the foods and supplements, and that does also include CBD. Now, the benefits. The early research is showing that CBD and other cannabinoids can do things like shrink tumors, reduce anxiety, reduce body pain, slow the formation of plaques on the brain, as in the case of Alzheimer's, improve digestion, reduce nausea, as I mentioned earlier, boost your brain health and your function, and even help sleep. Now, CBD can be inhaled for a very quick delivery through the lungs. It can be added to food, like, making a CBD oil, and, you could put it in a salad dressing or just drizzle it on your food if you want, or bake with it. You can also be made into tinctures, which tend to be kind of like a alcohol based that you put underneath your tongue for quick absorption. You can also put it into salves that go into your skin and into your body through your fat cells. You're definitely not going to feel any sort of effects with any products in that kind of delivery. For me, I make a homemade version of CBD oil, and I take a little bit of that every single night. And I consider this to be a food version. I've experienced reduced pain, which suggests the lowering of inflammation, definitely reduced anxiety, and it always helps with sleep as well. So did you even know, as we talk about all of this, that our bodies are actually equipped with endocannabinoid receptors? endocannabinoid receptors. These are basically like little parking places for CBD and THC. And these receptors are found all over your body. As I mentioned earlier, the brain, the skin, the bones, organs, your immune system, which are the immune cells in your digestive tract, even your heart and your blood vessels can be and are influenced by cannabinoids. That's why the effects are so far-reaching. The benefits are so far-reaching. Now, CBD and THC are the most well-known components of the cannabis plant, but there are so many other lesser-known cannabinoids such as CBG and CBN. Now, CBG is cannabigerol. It's only found in trace amounts in hemp plants, but the healing properties and potential for this CBG or this cannabinoid is off the chart. CBG is known as the mother or the precursor of all the other cannabinoids, so you really can't separate it out. Now, CBN is cannabinol, and that has been studied and found to be great help with people with chronic muscle pain disorders like temporomandibular or jaw pain and even fibromyalgia. So although I personally don't use THC, there are some health benefits, especially for people with PTSD and yes, chronic pain. But a little word of warning when it comes to THC, heavy or regular use has been shown through studies and research to drain your adrenals. It does take a toll on your liver, and it's been known to kill your libido. So people can actually build up a tolerance to THC, much the same as alcohol. But interestingly enough, that's not the case with CBD. So you can feel free to dose as needed. So a day that maybe you're experiencing more anxiety or more pain or you're having issues sleeping, then you can dose up a little bit. And the next day, if you're feeling better, you can dose down a little bit. You're not going to have to worry about, any sort of tolerance issues or even really getting too much. The good news is that cannabis itself as a whole has very little risk. In fact, there hasn't ever been a single person ever recorded that has overdosed from it. Just think of all of the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that overdose with prescription medication or alcohol every single year, every single day. Crazy. And just a little tip, if you do get too high, if you are a THC user, the psychedelic version user, if you get too high, CBD will actually reverse the situation and sober you right up. So I don't personally recommend getting high on anything, whether it's through drinking or smoking or pills or whatever it is. I believe that we are better off in control of our emotions and actions with a clear mind, as in sober, a sober mind. And that's another very important principle in my Christian belief. Now, CBD and THC are best used in the whole plant form rather than from isolates. This just means taking the CBD itself, those cannabidiol, directly out of the plant. One of the reasons is because of terpenes. Terpenes are also in the cannabis plant. Terpenes give the plant its color, for one, and they're basically little other chemicals or compounds that we find in the plants, and we also find them in essential oils. It's what gives essential oils their healing properties, and CBD has over 120 different terpenes in the cannabis plant alone, not CBD, just in the cannabis plant alone, over 120 different terpenes. So if you pull out and use CBD in an isolated form, then you're not getting the benefit of all of those terpenes. So I use the whole plant form when I make my oil, so I benefit from both the CBD as well as the terpenes and all the other components that I believe are a very important part of using natural medicine. Now, a common complaint when someone says that CBD doesn't work for them is because they tried like a grocery store version or an isolate version. And there's just so much question when it comes to quality and potency and even the delivery. But just like any other plant, cannabis comes in many strains and varieties, and it's important to know what works best for you. So I know what I want to work on in my body and how I need to supplement. So it's definitely for pain management, for sleep, for anxiety. And so I use a specific CBD strain that has the chemical components or makeups of terpenes and cannabinoids to deliver that to me. So that is the best strain for me. So you really need to know not only what you need, and you need to work with somebody that knows cannabis in and of itself that can pair that up for you. And it is a little bit of trial and error. Every plant varies so much. And speaking of trial and error, dosing can be very difficult. Our bodies are all different, how we respond to anything, even if it's something like pharmaceutical or over the counter, like a Tylenol, might respond really well in one person and yet not another. So the general rule when trying cannabis, just like with anything natural, is to start low and go slow. That means that you take a very small dose and you be sure to wait for at least 2 hours before increasing that dose. Now, personally, when I make my own CBD oil, it's as simple as cooking the cannabis down into an oil for many hours, straining it, and then jarring it and storing it. It's extremely simple. And truthfully, I was spending $150 a month on just 1 ounce of CBD, which I would use in a month. 1 ounce for $150 plus shipping. And then I realized that I can make my own for a fraction of the price. So I make it about once every 3 months or so. Absolutely easy. I save so much money. I can't lab test it. That's the only thing. I can't lab test it. I can't say to a friend, here's some CBD. This is exactly how much you're going to get in a dose. So that's where it gets a little different. I don't have a lab tested plant, even that I'm starting with, to know my exact dose, but I do buy from an organic farmer. So if you buy your CBD flower, if you want to make your own, I recommend going to a licensed dispensary, because the cannabis that they are legally having to buy, at least in the state of California, has to go through third-party testing and have all of this information on it. Rather than if you're someone like myself and you know a private organic grower like I do, just be sure that that grower is definitely, growing the plants free of pesticides and fungicides and all the other chemicals, including harmful bacteria or mold, which is the farmer that I go to. She grows outside in the sun, how plants are supposed to be grown, and she uses no chemicals on them. And but the licensed dispensaries, that's why I'm all for them. They have very strict guidelines. So I definitely want to make sure that those licensed dispensaries are able to stay open, rather than just some of the pure recreational facilities and you don't really know what you're getting. So quality really, really matters. Now, there are so many recipes for making your own CBD medicine, and I encourage you to try it out if you're interested. CBD, like I mentioned earlier, can be added to salad dressings, put into soup, or made into like little cookies or other edibles. But be careful when you're consuming edibles and cannabis. It may take a while to realize the effect, and edibles are a much stronger form of influence than even smoking, tinctures, or oils, and they'll last much longer in your system. So I say get a good cannabis cookbook if you kind of want to DIY it, do it yourself. There's a great cookbook, a book actually that's very educational and has some recipes by Jenny Sansucci. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but it's Sansuci. It's either Sansucci or Sansusi, and it's called The Rebel's Apothecary. She not only covers cannabis, including CBD, but she also talks about a lot of medicinal mushrooms, and it's very detailed yet interesting, and she has all sorts of how-tos and recipes for trying different things out inside her book. As always, I love to offer a little education to you when I'm doing these podcasts, and then of course send you to a source that is the real pro in a particular field. And even though I'm a cannabis user, a CBD user, I would definitely not call myself a cannabis professional. So go grab this wonderful book, The Rebel's Apothecary, if you can. Now, I hope that this answered some of your burning questions about this precious plant, but I can truly say that it has changed my life. And since making it a part of my daily life, I've taken a couple vacations from it to test its worth, meaning I put it aside and maybe won't take it for several days or a week. And my husband will agree. It works. It reduces my overall body pain, helps me sleep, and definitely helps with my anxiety or just feelings of anxiousness or overwhelm. So for me, as a Christian, I don't see a problem when it comes to cannabis, not for me at least, but if someone has a history of drug abuse and cannabis has played a role in that, then I could see how that would be problematic. But the real question is in your heart. Do you want to get high? I mean, the Bible is very clear about sobriety. If you're a Christian, then you should be able to answer that question yourself. It's like, what do you really want out of this? But I do believe that we should be honored and obeyed in anything that alters our state of consciousness. We should know about it, and we should be aware of it, and we should be weary of things that alter our state of consciousness. So thank you for listening to the Restore Path podcast. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, and you can find me on Brandy on the Path for Health on both Facebook and Instagram. You can head to my website, thepathforhealth.com, and there's a bunch of freebie stuff there. And when I do midweek little free webinar trainings, I always post the latest one right there on the front of my website. Right when you get there, you can see it. And don't forget, please leave a comment. Give me a review, and make sure you subscribe. It kind of lets me know, hey, is anybody listening, and are they liking what they're getting? Do they have any questions? I adore questions. If you want to email me directly, you can email me at brandy@thepathforhealth.com, and I'd be happy to answer a question, maybe even do a little podcast for you. All right, have a great day, and I will see you on the Path for Health.